Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sarah and Adam Show. We have shade.
We have shade.
Well, you do. You're always throwing it. So we're trying to figure out our sign-ons and sign-offs, guys. And Sarah, do we have a sign-on? I feel like you think we do, and I feel like we don't.
Oh, I just assumed you had one in mind already. I probably shouldn't have done that.
I just like the idea of drawing attention to how much shade you throw.
Somebody has to be consistent around here.
I'm consistently sick of your shade.
That's fair. That is fair.
So this is our second episode, and we have a great slate of things that we're going to discuss a little bit. Like we've got the She-Hulk show, the first episode of She-Hulk. We have some more discussion on the Rings show, the things about rings. Is that what they're called? That's what it's called.
That's what I'm gonna call it from now on.
Things about rings.
Things about rings.
That sounds like something you would call it. But Lord of the Rings, so yeah, some news on that, maybe some discussion on the Rings of Power. And yeah, what else are we talking about, Sarah?
I think you covered it all.
Yeah, we don't have much today, but
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot to talk about with the She-Hulk, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm excited because you for real actually watched one of the Lord of the Rings movies.
I know, and like I stayed awake through the whole thing.
No,
I did. I was like, I'm getting sleepy,
no,
and I paused it, and I had a little nap, and then I woke up and finished the rest of it.
right. So that's not staying awake through the whole thing. That's taking a nap in between.
Okay, but the last time I watched it, I took a nap while it played, so I missed the
Right.
whole middle chunk.
Right. And then you were like, I watched it. That doesn't count. That's not watching it.
Right, whereas now I watched it. I took a prolonged bathroom break where I just napped, and then I started it again.
I mean, that's good. I'm I will accept that as you having watched the whole thing. I won't accept that as you having stayed awake through the whole thing. But it's okay.
Semantics.
So woman ticks. Sorry, I just didn't want to take all the heat for that. So, I guess the first thing we could talk about there's some news, and I don't know how much we should like dive into all this stuff, but so Lord of the Rings rights were bought by the Embracer Group, the Hugging Group, which is a gaming company. Well, yeah, you were saying like, oh yeah, what's the name of that company? And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. It's like the Hugging Group
Because they
you know,
embrace. I got
right.
it.
No, but I couldn't remember it either. But that was how I had it associated in my mind. So that then I was, anyway. So Lord of the Rings rights have been sold, and I don't know. I think what it is. It's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. It's not like second age stuff as far as I understand.
Yeah, that's how I understood it too. And they, like, so they've got the rights to the movies, and they can, like, create video games and whatever. As far as I know, TV show rights are excluded, so that, I guess, means they can't make, like, a new TV show based in the same era of the universe, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then like the book rights are excluded.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of rules around it. I just thought it was interesting.
Okay, so you saw this, and I guess my question is, would we have even cared or thought about it at all? Like, would it even have come up on the news at all if we weren't just around the corner from this Lord of the Rings, the what's it called, Rings of Power show coming out by Amazon? The $1 billion show that everyone is all excited or hyped or just like already hating.
Um, I don't know, actually. That's a pretty good point, because that's what caught my attention about it, was the fact that the rights were sold. Well, so then actually, I thought, because at first I didn't know who they were sold to. I just saw that they had been sold. And I thought maybe it was sold to a streaming company, because you can't stream the movies anywhere.
You could rent them on Amazon, right?
You can rent them, yeah, but like they're not on Prime to stream. They're not on Netflix. They're not on
Right.
HBO. Like you
You
can't.
can't you can't pop down to Blockbuster and pick them up.
Do you guys still have Blockbuster?
No, I was that was a joke,
Okay.
Sarah. Do you still have Blockbuster?
No.
Did you ever have Blockbuster?
Yeah, we had Blockbuster.
Okay.
Uh, um.
Well, I don't know why I don't believe you.
Oh man, that's rude. No, but I just thought it was interesting, and then I also thought it was interesting because it's a gaming company, and CG Capital Games is releasing a mobile game based off Lord of the Rings.
Oh man. Yeah, so I actually EA actually has video game rights for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so I thought this was
I
interesting that
was
that another video game company bought
Mhm.
the rights.
Yeah, and Embracer has actually a lot of different properties, which I mean, I didn't even know who they were for a while, so I'm not going to talk like I or like till recently, like yesterday is when I found out about them. So it's not like I'm well acquainted, but the reason I even knew who they were, and I was like, man, these guys like they have my attention now because it's two articles in a row. They actually recently, and I guess it's not so like way out in the out in public eye like official, but like there's a lot of different dots that you can connect that it looks like pretty sure that the Knights of the Old Republic remake game has been in trouble for a while. Like they did a demo and they spent so much time on the demo that the people who watched the demo were like how much money did you put into just making this demo? Like it was like
Oh,
and then they got shut down because they're like they weren't making enough progress. They were putting too much effort into looking like they had made progress essentially.
right.
So the guy kind of
Yikes.
got shut down, and now I guess the Embracer Group has bought the rights to like they bought that project or something.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's how it worked, or how it
Uh,
went down, or whatever.
and I don't pretend to. Maybe someone listening is like, no, that's not how it went. But I know that right now it's looking like they are the ones who have the Knights of the Old Republic at the very least. So then I heard about the Lord of the Rings rights, and then in that same article they were like, oh yeah, and EA also has Lord of the Rings, so they promised they're going to make a bunch of really awesome games after they make a mobile game that no one asked for,
Right.
which about Lord of the Rings, and I thought it was funny because I'm looking forward to potentially playing that game. I asked for it, damn it, their target audience.
Ah, yeah, but I just thought that was interesting because I didn't know if the rights being sold was going to affect that, or like how it would work. So that's mainly why it caught my eye.
Okay,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
cool.
So we'll see what they do with it, I guess.
Yeah, we will. Um, yeah, I don't know what to expect. Like, I guess the thing that's interesting about when someone purchases a thing like that,
Hmm.
like you have to think that it costs a lot of money, and I didn't see a price tag attached associated, but yeah, you have to think it's not just like, hey, I'll buy you dinner or
Right.
something. It's something, it's on the line of millions of dollars probably.
Oh yeah. Another thing that I was reading that they have the rights to with as part of this is, um, if the Tolkien estate decides to sell the rights to another like chunk of it, if they were going to sell the rights to,
Hmm.
I don't know, like the Second Age stuff or whatever, um, the Embracer Group has the right to match any current offer on it.
Ooh, it's kind
Yeah.
of fun.
So I was like, oh, I feel like that would be like also like a hefty thing to add to your clause or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, it's pretty interesting. you don't spend that kind of money on something that you don't intend. Like I'll just sit on it. Like
Right.
we're good. We're good. Like maybe nothing comes of it, but it's not for want of trying
Right.
on their end.
So, I thought that was
Like
interesting though.
so, like Brandon Sanderson. This isn't like fresh news or anything, but he's written a lot of books that I love, and so he was shopping around. He had his rights to the Cosmere, which is like the
The
whole like
universe.
the universe that he built, like makes a bunch of books in, and all the stories are in some way somehow related. Like they all have the same kind of foundation, and so even if the characters are totally different, worlds totally different, magic system, blah blah blah. It's anyway. So he really wants them to make a movie of like Stormlight Archive or something awesome, and so his clause to that, like his contract with them was, like he'll sell them the rights, but then part of it is they have to spend a certain amount of money developing a movie,
Oh.
and it's like certain millions of dollars. It's like, so if they can show that they've actually used that money to build the move to make a movie, like, so maybe nothing comes of it, but at the very least they're going to be poorer by however many $1 million
Right.
because they have to spend that money on developing the movie. So it's like you may as well. And his attitude was so interesting because people are like, man, so what if you think it's going to be a terrible movie? Like, what, if it looks like it's going to be really cheesy and really awful,
Mm-hmm.
like, would you still, like, you just pull it out? Like, you have that right? And he's like, yeah, I have. He also has the right, I think. Maybe it's a different project, and it might be me mixing them up, but I think he was like, yeah, I have the right to pull the project and say, like, no, don't make this movie. But um, at, at the end of the day, I'd rather have them make a movie. I'd rather risk a bad movie than have it never be made at all.
That's interesting because a lot of authors, when they sell their rights for like for their book to be turned into a movie, they lose the rights. Like they aren't involved.
Yeah, I feel like he had some level of rights at least. I don't know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's well, because he's so rich now. I think he's just like more interested in, like, well, I mean, who wouldn't want it? It'd be pretty awesome to someday have a movie made of something that I had created.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Totally. I'm just
even if it was really poorly done, it'd be like, hi, there's a movie. Like, how
yeah.
cool is that?
It's just like it's impressive that he can have it so that he gets to pull the plug if he wants to.
Like I said, it might be for a different project than like this multi-million one.
Right.
I don't remember,
But in
but yeah, he was
general,
talking about a project at all. Yeah, I mean, if I feel like if you could make all sorts of unreasonable demands and someone might pick it up anyways, you know?
yeah. I mean, like the
So,
only. I don't know how heavily involved the Tolkien estate was for the Lord of the Rings movies, but I'm assuming very heavily involved. And then like J.K. Rowling was super heavily involved for Harry Potter, and those are the only ones I can think of. Every other author I know who's had a book turned into a movie and has spoken about it afterwards has spoken about how they had no control over what happened once they sold the rights.
yeah, I mean, I think any creator who's being respectful with the source material anyways is going to heavily involve the author quite a bit.
Right.
Anyway, at least if they want to stay within the same tone and the same everything.
Right.
I don't know. I would think. I mean, I don't want to watch a movie about Brandon Sanderson's work
Mm-hmm.
that isn't like something that he's also had a huge say in. Make like he's the expert on those things. Like he should have a ton of say in things. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense to give them a little bit of, I don't know, power involved too.
It does. I'm just thinking of all the movies I've seen that I'm like, this is nowhere near the book.
I know.
Or like they've drastically changed things because it, does the test audience read better or whatever the thing is.
Man, it is so fascinating to me. Like this war or the Rings of Power show that's coming out. The set, like, all we have is a bunch of just random trailers. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's not much footage so far. It's very apparent they've spent a lot of money. They've done interviews, and and like, so I'll read one article and it's like, oh wow, these guys are being so respectful toward Tolkien. Like they know their stuff. They're quoting, like citing like some really obscure texts, like there are literally like letters that Tolkien wrote to people about Lord of the Rings that are like in some compendium that they're citing about his intentions toward Middle Earth and
Hmm.
stuff. And like they clearly know their source material and are very respectful. Like, man, we really want to make sure we get this right. And we talk to the story group, or to the not the story group, we talk to the Tolkien estate all the time to make sure we get all this stuff. So like I'll read one article about that, and then the next one will be, they don't care about the source material, they're just trying to like put in their own agenda, and they're so ridiculous because of this thing and that thing. And I can't believe how much controversy is already here, and we haven't even seen a single episode.
Hmm.
People actively want to hate the show before it even exists.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, just give it a chance.
Yeah, like I don't think I can expect the level of magic that the movie trilogy
Right.
had for me. Like the Hobbit, clear like the Hobbit trilogy,
Hmm.
when they made that, it is, they did an okay job on certain aspects, and I probably think it was more interesting now. Actually, I should go back and rewatch it. But like the Hobbit stuff was so disappointing because the original trilogy, like you know
It was
the Lord of the Rings
so
trilogy,
so well done that it's hard to live up to that kind of thing.
yeah, it was overwhelmingly awesome. Like it was so perfect in
Hmm.
encapsulating like the feel of like the essence of what the books were. It was just so perfect, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect that to ever happen again for any medium. Like they're just like perfect movies almost. Like there are aspects that I'm like, oh okay, like there's little things, but I mean they're so good. I have a hard time thinking that this show can't live up to them. They can spend $1 billion, that they won't be as good as the movies. I don't think. I hope it
Hmm.
is, but
I'm curious now what you'll think when once it's started.
I'm really trying to curb my expectations.
Hmm.
It's looking more and more intriguing, and there's some certain issues with it that I have, or that I'm going to be looking at, I should say.
Hmm.
Like the time compression stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, we could really run into some issues here if they weren't really really careful. But people don't know. People don't know if they've been just categorically disdainful or not. We
Right.
we just we have no idea so far. But I don't know how many websites I've just like blocked from my phone. Like they're like, hey, here's a thing that you should read. I'm like, this is so biased and stupid. Like there, I can't learn anything other than this person wants to hate this show already, for nebulous reasons.
Right. They're not even giving it a chance yet.
Maybe it'll suck.
Oh
It,
man.
may, it might suck. I
Right,
hope
but
not.
you have to watch it first before you can come to that conclusion.
Right. Well, and the funny thing is, the only people who can even talk about how it's gonna suck are like the hardcore fanboys. There's not that many of them.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I mean, you just have to think. I mean, I don't think like Game of Thrones, for instance, didn't. I feel like that it didn't stray that far from the source material. Like they had to condense some things and leave some things out and change some things or whatever. But um, I don't know. I didn't really follow that show too much, but I felt like they stayed kind of within that. But even if the fanboys, like all the people who loved reading the books, were like, we hate this, like the people who knew the text intimately and knew everything about it, like who really cares that much about what they think? Because there's a huge audience of people who haven't read it,
Yeah,
who are gonna,
exactly.
like, they're the ones who actually matter. It's the same as Wheel of Time, for that
Hmm.
matter.
Right, because you're hooking a new audience and keeping them
Well,
interested.
well, when we watched Wheel of Time, like a lot of our, like, we had criticisms stuff as we read the book,
Hmm.
and and then people are like, dude, you got to lay out. Like, I had so many people tell me, like, okay, well, thanks for your take, but like, I haven't read the books, and I think that the show's pretty cool
Right.
because it's you're gonna watch it and it's gonna be different. So at the end of the day, it's just funny because the only people criticizing the show are just like epic fanboys
Which is fair.
who we don't care about.
No.
Maybe
No.
we do. So some of them, there are a couple that are. I feel like there are a few who have presented their cases really fairly, and they're like, "Well,
Yeah.
is this something I'm going to be looking at and paying attention to?" But it's not a thing that I'm just, like they're being respectful of it. Like maybe I'll like it. I'm nervous, but we'll see. We'll see.
We
What do
will.
you? So, what are you thinking of? Like, are you excited for the show? You gonna?
Yeah, I am really excited for the show.
Yeah.
Um, I think it'll be. I think it's going to be very interesting. I am. Okay, so if you had to explain the concept of the show from what you can have gathered based off what you've read and like the trailer snippets we've seen to somebody who is unfamiliar with the different ages of Lord of the Rings, because like I didn't know that there were different ages until you told me.
Hmm.
How would you explain it to somebody basically?
Sure. Okay. So, like, someone who's like familiar with the basic story of Lord of the Rings, like
Yeah.
the original. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's so much because there's three ages, so that that we know about. I guess there's like a little source material into the fourth age, but that's not much. Like three major ages, and so like there's the first age. It is where like the world is created, and the world is actually flat.
Oh.
When it's created, and actually in this show, I don't know if they'll show it, if they'll just leave it out, but in this show is when the world becomes round. Just a random fact, but
Okay.
that's like a very minor detail. Uh, but like when someone flees across the sea and then burns a bunch of ships, the people across the sea can see the light of the burning ships that far away. Anyway, so the Valar are created, and they're like the demigods, and then they create the elves, and the elves create things called the Silmarils, and one of the Valar, who's like the evil guy, his name is Melkor. Eventually, he's called Morgoth. He steals them and flees across the ocean. He essentially, like, I'm leaving things out, but there's just too much to cover. So the
Right.
elves pursue, and at some point, someone creates the humans, and they're over across the sea as well. And so the elves and the humans are fighting Morgoth, and there's this long, protracted thing. This is all in the first age, and Morgoth is essentially like this is what the Silmarillion, the book, the Silmarillion's about. Um, it's this big fight, and eventually the elves and humans are going to lose. Like Morgoth just keeps, he makes dragons, he makes Balrogs, he twists elves into being orcs. Um, like, and he gets a bunch of men to betray people, and he's gonna win. And then someone goes and tells the Valar, they're like, "Hey, Melkor's gonna win." And they're like, "What? WTF?" And they go over and fight the War of Wrath for 40 years, and Melkor, Morgoth, whatever, is thrown in prison, is thrown in the void, and that's the end of the first age. So at the start of the second age, and that's why I wanted to give a little bit of the background. So the Valar who went to have this War of Wrath with Melkor, they so Sauron is the lieutenant of Morgoth.
Okay. And Morgoth,
And
Morgoth and Melkor are the same person.
yeah, sorry, I'm kind of using them interchangeably. Like
No, just making sure.
at some point he like takes a new name,
Right. Got it.
you know. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, you're good.
So now, when we get to the second age, he's gone, and all the bad, like all the bad stuff is just scattered and everything. Sauron is, you know, kind of he's gone as well. He's not dead, of course, but um, and so the Valar, the demigods who had, had this war, they give the men who had helped them, they like alter their bodies so they can live a long time, and
Okay.
then they build an island called Numenor. So you're gonna, when you watch the Two Towers, they refer to this a lot actually. Like with Aragorn, they talk about Numenor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's descended from Numenorian kings. So Numenor is an island off of the mainland of Middle Earth, and so they can live to be, you know, 200, 300, 400 years old, whatever, and um as you know, other humans are just like normal crappy humans like us. um and
Peasants.
yeah, that, well, I mean, they kind of are, and the Valar have the elves teach them a bunch of stuff, and they're like superhumans, and that their power grows over the generations. But then their bitterness toward the Valar and the elves continue to grow. They become obsessed with death and the idea of that, why are the elves granted immortality? Because the elves can't die of old age. They can
Mm-hmm.
die of other things, but they're functionally immortal. And so the Numenorians are bitter about that. And you know, like, why? Yes, we live a lot longer than other men, but why? You know, and then at some point, they get so powerful that they, and Sauron has by then like crafted rings of power, and he's gone to war with the elves and the men on the mainland, and you know, the dwarves, and they're fighting and stuff, and the Numenorians come and stop them. And at some point, the Numenorians, way down the line, like toward the very end, like generation after generation after generation, becomes more and more bitter, and at the very end, like the last king goes and demands that Sauron just give up. And Sauron's like, yeah, I can't beat your armies. So he just like gives himself into their power, and then he insinuates himself into their councils almost
Okay.
immediately. Like he becomes a counselor to the last king.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually like, so there's this landscape of the Numenorians don't trust the elves really, not much. But there's factions in the Numenorian. So in these, like in the previews and stuff, you can see the island of Numenor,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's a great land. You know, seafarers. You know, they're very powerful people. Like they're at the very peak of their power, and there's factions. There's the people who, I forget what they're called. Like they're the Kingsmen, I think is what they're called, and they're anti-elf, anti-Valar. Like they're selfish, they're obsessed with death. And then there are, shoot, the loyalists, the true, I forget what they're called, but there's a faction that still loves the elves and wants good things. And so like in Lord of the Rings, though, you hear this legend of Isildur fighting Sauron and like cutting his, you know, in the movies, he chops the finger off of Sauron and the ring falls off, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
he dies. Isildur is actually part of those factions on Numenor, so we'll be able to see him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he's the one who eventually founds Gondor, which is one of the city, or
Mm-hmm.
one of the nations in Lord of the Rings. So, anyways, like this, there's the elves who are, you know, like Elrond is there. He's going to found Rivendell. There's Khazad-dûm, which is Moria, um, you know, which is in the first movie. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like the dwarves are living there, and Elrond goes to visit them, and it's this whole thing. Um, so there's all of that, and then the Numenorians, who are slowly becoming disenfranchised with the elves, and like don't trust anyone, and just don't. They're bitter, like, you're immortal. We're jealous of you, so we're not going to talk to you,
Right.
kind of thing. Anyways, I just went on way too long, probably, but
No. So I mean, we obviously know this, but basically the whole idea is this Rings of Power show is going to take place like thousands of years before what happens in the Lord of the Rings movies.
yes. Well, so here's the tricky thing is, all right. So the final chapter of the Second Age is with Sauron manipulating the Numenorians into doing foolish things,
Okay.
and eventually bringing about their ruin. Um, and I don't want to give away too much, but like he sets up like a shrine to Melkor. In fact, like a place that people were worshiping Melkor, and they're giving human sacrifices and all this horrible stuff.
Mm.
Um, but way before that, he actually, that's when he creates the rings with Celebrimbor, who's an elf, like a craftsman, and um like he creates the rings and the one ring and everything like way before he brings about the downfall of the Numenorians, and he's just like stopped by the Numenorians from you know or maybe it's by the dwarf. Now I'm forgetting, but like this all happens over the course of 3,000 years, that he creates the rings, he ensnares them, these a bunch of men, he's going having all these battles with the elves and the humans and the dwarves and stuff. He fights the Numenorians, and it's all over the course of 3,000 years, and they're gonna just smash it all in to one
Oh,
show.
yeah. Yep. So this is where you're saying you're looking out for that time condensed issue.
Right, like there's so much going on. Like the Numenorians, it's a really important thing, but not as important as other things that happened thousands of years prior to that. Or maybe it is more important, but it's gonna, you know, I'm interested to see how they do it. Like I can understand why they don't want to have to, so people are like suggesting, okay, it's going to be 5 seasons. Why not just have every season be, like 600 years after? You just have a whole new cast of humans each time.
Right.
And I can understand. I don't know. Like it sounds kind of fun, but I don't know if that's
It's
necessary.
it's one of those things where to people who know the story and understand why like that's happening, it makes sense. But if it doesn't test well with audiences going into it who don't
I
have
think
that
you're right.
knowledge, because you get attached to characters, right? It's the same thing. Like I remember when the Hobbit movies were coming out, everyone was, I don't want to say everyone, but I remember hearing people make a big deal about the fact that Legolas was in them
Oh, yep.
because he wasn't alive, I guess, when the Hobbit,
Oh, he was alive.
or he
He
wasn't
just
in it.
It wasn't in the book though. Yeah, he
So it was
was.
this whole thing that he was
Yeah.
there, and it's a fan service that's being done, right? Where they're putting a familiar character in to entice you to watch it. And it would be the same idea. Whereas if you're turning over your cast, because it makes sense realistically that the humans wouldn't be alive 600 years later, you would have a different group of humans. You've now got fans watching the show who are attached to those characters, and it's this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's gonna be real interesting.
I'm still really excited for it. Like I have very minimal knowledge, and what I've seen from it, like just from the trailers and everything, it looks like it's going to be very good.
Yeah.
I say that
So
though, like I'm going into it with only having watched the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies.
so one thing to look out for here is Sauron. At some point, he disguises himself like he becomes beautiful, kind of. It's almost parallel to like Satan, how he's supposed
Okay,
to be
yeah.
beautiful, but but a deceiver. He calls himself Anatar, which is like, it means like giver of gifts. And so he's able to trick everyone, at least all the humans, into thinking he's like this really awesome guy, and the elves for the most part. But eventually they see that he's full of crap. But like he deceives everyone, and that's how he's able to get all those rings out to everyone.
Okay.
He gets the rings. He's Anatar. He's giving the gifts, and the elves at the last minute kind of realize, oh crap, he's going to try to enslave us and snare us with these rings. And so the elves actually do something to make it so that the elvish rings aren't beholden to the ring of, the one true ring,
The One Ring of Power.
the ring that binds them all. In the darkness binds them.
I'm interested. I don't know. I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot.
Yeah,
So
I think it'll be good. So, anyways, I'm really excited to see what they do. It's gonna be a lot of stuff.
yeah.
I hope it's good. So the other thing that like one of the biggest complaints that people have, I guess as my closing remark, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel one way or another about this, is so there's almost zero mention of the hobbits
Right.
in until you get to the Hobbit timeline. Like there's like a mention of, at some point they're ceded the Shire, like they're given the Shire to live in and stuff. But that's like almost a footnote, and like the text goes out of its way to say that the hobbits don't do anything heroic or impressive at all
Mm-hmm.
until like the Lord of the Rings time period, so
Right.
the Third Age. And yet there's going to be hobbits. They're called Harfoots here, but that's one of like the three like types of hobbit kind of.
Right.
um and the Harfoots are in it, even though there's no mention of them in the text anywhere. And if they do anything
Mm.
heroic or important at all, it's going to go against what the you know
Mm. Okay.
the text has. So that, I mean, I think that's like one of the biggest ammo things. People are like, well, why are the Harfoots there? Like they're not in the story.
Right.
And they, I mean, at the end of the day, I think they just did it to get buy-in from people. They're like, oh, hey, there's Hobbit. I mean,
It's a
like,
similar thing of putting Legolas in The Hobbit.
yeah. Or I mean, why? How many views did Mandalorian get because of Grogu?
Right.
Because he's a sympathetic character. Everyone's like, oh, that's awesome. He's a baby Yoda. Like that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Like, hey, they're hobbits. Oh, hobbits.
yeah, that's
Like,
gonna be interesting then, because are they there solely as a fan service to entice viewers, or are they gonna walk that line or cross that line? Mm. I'm interested now. Well, I mean, I was before,
right.
but that's gonna be interesting to watch for.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like hearing about all these controversies, so then I can kind of, it's kind of like an inside joke a little bit of,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. How are they gonna do this? Like when we watch Kenobi, there was a lot of things that it's like, man, they're gonna have to come up with some good explanations for all this stuff. And at the end of it, I don't know. I didn't I actually intentionally didn't read other people's reviews and stuff because I didn't want to just be annoyed forever. But I was very satisfied with all the different things. Like they kind of just set it all back in place, and it's like, oh, I'm ready for episode 4 now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I want to see how they approach that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Hmm. Okay. So, Rings of Power seems good.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk She-Hulk?
Yeah, let's talk about She-Hulk. We both watched it.
We did. So there's two Hulks now. She's a Hulk, I think is what she describes herself as, right?
Yeah, she says she's a Hulk.
Yeah. So what'd you think?
I liked it a lot more than I mean, I thought that I would like it, but
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. I thought this was probably one of the best pilot episodes of a series, of a Marvel series, but not even of a Marvel series, of like an origin series of sorts for a character.
Okay. Why did you like it so much? What was so good?
I thought, well, first of all, I'm still heavily biased. I really like Tatiana Maslany as a actress. Um,
Okay.
but I thought the decision to break the fourth wall was really cool, where she's talking to the
Mm-hmm.
audience and the camera and looking directly into the camera. I loved that. I really like that they made it so that, and I think this is probably why I think it's one of the stronger origin series. It was really great to make it so that she's Bruce Banner's cousin, and to have him there, kind of like, I don't want to say giving her a leg up, but it really, I think, helped propel her story more, especially when you could see the contrast between them as characters and just how they are, as like their personalities are very different, similar but different,
Mm-hmm.
and their Hulk personalities are very different as well. And so it was really cool to see the contrast there side by side. I thought that was a really good idea to have him in it. So
Yeah, he was good.
it just had a lot of like it felt like that really added to it, and then it had a lot of really good humor. They had really good banter back and forth, like just on screen. I thought their chemistry was really great between them. Um, it just flowed really well. And I also really like that. Sorry. Um, I really like that he was like, "Yeah, you're a superhero now," and she's like, "I don't want to be like I want my regular life back. I don't want this." And it was just really refreshing because so far you see everyone wants to be a superhero, or they find out that they have these powers and they're just like, okay, I guess I am a superhero, and they go with it.
Hmm.
And it was really refreshing that she was just like, no, like just teach me how to control it, and once I can control it, I'm good. I'm gonna go back and do my lawyer thing.
Okay.
So that's what I thought. What did you think?
I didn't like her.
You didn't like her?
She was annoying. She was ungrateful. She was so self-centered and full of herself. I was annoyed almost the whole time. I was not rooting for her.
Oh my goodness.
I just think that like she can't even say sorry about something she was just totally awful about. Like she's like sorry, but not actually sorry because it was true. Like just I she's like no, I gotta go. I don't want to do with your thing. Your life is sad. This sucks. I hate it. I can do everything better than you. I'm better than you. I'm leaving. Goodbye. And she's like, oh, and by the way, like you've never had to deal with what I have to deal with because I'm a woman. Clearly, you men can't understand a single thing that women have to go through. And I mean, I agree to some degree, but at the same time, it's very like, well, I have to deal with anger all the time. I'm superior to you, and that as well. And the whole thing was just like, I can do it better than you, and I'm fine with her being competitive. That's fine. And yet, the level of like disdain she has for him is so remarkable. And I also just like her lack of empathy and compassion for him. He is very clearly like excited, like he wants you. He's lonely. She even points it out how lonely he is. And he's like excited to finally have someone who could maybe understand a little of what he's going through. And she's just like, you're sad and pathetic, goodbye. And all men are either the Hulk and pathetic and sad like him, or they're rapists, or they're incompetent doofuses who you'd rather listen to a paralegal over than a trained lawyer.
No, I think that's an exaggeration. I think what she's getting at is
No, that's how it was portrayed. Every physical character we saw is what I'm saying.
every physical character we saw.
Right.
Okay.
Like every male we saw was either like an awful, incompetent lawyer, or Bruce Banner, or a rapist,
But we
or
didn't
a
see
proto rapist. Like
we didn't see very many,
right.
to be fair, because a lot of it was with her and Bruce.
Hmm.
Um, I took her like statements about anger as
Hmm.
like that is just a social commentary, because like you do have to keep your emotions in check because otherwise you are seen
Sure.
as emotional. And I
And
remember,
I get that.
and like I've heard stories about women in workplaces who have been called emotional, or they're overreacting or anything like that, where they're in meetings. And I actually really enjoyed this story about a woman who started doing it to one of her male colleagues. Anytime he would react the same way as her, and she'd be like, "Oh, well, why are you being so emotional today? Like, I can't have this conversation with you when you're overreacting." And she just started turning it around. And it's the same, like it's that kind of a thing where you have to be even keeled. So that's how I took it. What she was saying is like she has to have this even keel, and I thought it was funny that she was saying it, and while she was saying it, she was starting to Hulk out because it's a very typical thing where you are trying to control that so that you are even keeled and you don't come across as emotional, and it makes you angry. Like
Sure.
it's such a spot on social commentary, which is why like I can see what you're saying about her coming across as ungrateful or arrogant or whatever. I took their interaction and their relationship. Like I was watching it, I was like, that's how like I look at that. I'm like, that's how I was with my cousins when I was younger. Like this whole butting heads and
Sure.
thinking you were better than others and all of that. Like that was a very I thought that was a very spot on portrayal. And I think honestly, like I don't know, I think maybe it's good that you see her that way because you can't have a character start, in my opinion, at like the top shelf tier. Like there's no development. There's no character development for them to have to go through.
Oh, and that's what my hope is that she's going to. I felt she was like incredibly ungrateful to him for like he's like, all right, like let's figure this out. Let's he wants to take time to mentor her and teach her, and even if she does need to go back to her life, and I don't think it was unreasonable for her want to go back to be, I thought it was cool too that she was like, no, I don't want to be a superhero, but then she was a super bee about it. She's like, because I don't want to be like you, look at how pathetic you are, like she said, and then she didn't even say sorry. She's like, sorry, not sorry. Like, like I said what I said, and I'm not sorry, and it was very hurtful, to him. Like he was like genuinely hurt, but I felt she was very self-centered, and it was frustrating to see, and then what, like, I guess we'll see the fallout from like the last, like some random supervillain comes in and she just like hulks out and punches her a couple times, and sweet, I'm ready to give my final speech.
Right.
Like it seemed like there was no consequences. It was just like she's good at everything, she's wonderful at everything, she's she's highly competent, that's fine, she's confident, she's there's a lot to like about her, a lot of good, and yet I didn't like how she treated Bruce. I felt like she just wasn't nice, that's all.
That's fair. But I mean, I think we will see consequences.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just,
I mean,
just based off what Bruce was saying to her, like he seemed to be really foreshadowing things.
Well, and I hope that she eventually is like, oh, there's actually value to what he's saying. But she's so dismissive.
Like this episode, not to do like a whole recap of it, but what you're saying,
A recap,
but not to like get into it. But at the end, like exactly what you say, you see her Hulk out and punch this villain a couple of times, and then she switches back and it's like, okay, like I'm gonna do my closing argument now, and her clothes is all ripped and like she's all disheveled and all of this, and then it ends, so we don't get to see anything. Like I would assume like you could theoretically have that play out where she thinks she did a great thing and then the jury's now terrified of her. Like, and we don't get to see that. So I'm curious if, like, over the series, if we'll see what Bruce was saying. Like, people will start looking at you as a monster.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope she, because here's the thing. Like, she's like 15 years. You spent 15 years doing this. Like, you're like. I don't know. She just had so much disdain for him, and he's like, "This is the only way I've been able to cope. Like I've worked so hard on this. This has been such a difficult thing for me." And she's like, "Well, I do it better. No, I'm better. Like I want her to see that she doesn't do it better. She just thinks she does it better, and then she can maybe surpass him. And I want her to grow into actually being better. She's not. Because she's. I don't want someone like you said, I don't want to have like, hey, she's perfect already.
Right.
Let's like watch let's watch 6 episodes of a perfect person. Like I want to see someone who is not perfect progress toward, in that direction.
Right. And I think like part of it is why it's probably really good that we had Bruce Banner there to highlight those differences. He's talking about how long it took him to figure this out and like learn to cope and learn to live with it and all of this. And the key difference that you learn right away is she doesn't have a second personality inside of her
Sure.
trying to take control, right? So she's in control the entire time. So it is different for her. Like,
Oh yeah.
whether it's better or not, like it is a totally different experience.
Yeah.
I think she's probably just the type of impatient person where she's like, okay, well I've gotten it done, so we don't need this anymore. This is pointless.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, so she's being dismissive.
Right.
That's all. Like, I feel like she took the no double personality thing as proof that she doesn't need to do,
Right.
She's just automatically better. I'll be interested to see how they take it. I'm not going to quit on the series or anything. I did think she grated on me a little bit, and like we'll see. Maybe she'll. I mean, I want to like it. I hope it gets better. I hope that she is more interesting to me.
Yeah, I think she will be. I'm curious to see what they do. I also I don't think we're going to see Bruce in it much more, if at all.
No.
No, I just have this like maybe another episode, one episode.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right. I think it would steal from. So if she does have a good arc of like learning and growth and discovery, well, because it was just funny. She's like, "Oh, here, you're not going to be able to focus on anything until I tell you about the Hulk thing." And then I was like, "Oh, is she going to tell the whole story from like, okay, this is the end point here?"
Right.
But she's like so early on in the story. She's like, "Oh, let me tell you about the distant past," and okay, and now you have the whole story. And it's like, well, this
It's
is
not.
a show with probably 6 episodes, so
Right.
so it's and I will say I kind of like the breaking the fourth wall. That was fine. Not too many shows can pull that off, but it was fine. Yeah, I just thought I would hope that, yeah, I don't want Bruce Banner to come in and save her from
No.
I want her to grow on her own. She needs to grow. He can't do it for her.
Right, which is what I'm thinking. Like it's gonna take away from her storyline. I also just think it's going to distract from her as a character in general. I thought it was great to have him there for the first episode. I think it's very smart. It felt like it was easier to kind of like fall in with this new character sort of because you have a familiar face there. It's a fan service thing, what we were just talking about. But
yeah.
it makes it really smooth. It's a smooth transition going from him to her. And it's probably going to be a little bit bumpy while she's figuring everything out and going through the ringer because I'm assuming it's not going to be smooth sailing for her. But I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think he should come in and save her.
Right. Well, yeah, I do want to just make sure that I say I understand. Well, I can't fully understand. I do want to make sure that it's understood. Like I don't mean to say like that women have the exact same workplace interactions as men or whatever. Like I get that there could be I felt like she overplayed that just a little bit, I guess, like, well, that's
the first thing a man ever said to me at my job is, "You are surprisingly good at your job." So I don't think she overplayed it at all, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I guess I just felt like that was she. Mm, I don't know. I felt very lumped in with it. Like I don't know.
Right.
Like she she doesn't she didn't differentiate. I guess maybe she did. I don't know. I felt very like included. Like hey, Adam, you're also like a
Right.
terrible person. Like you treat all females poorly in the workplace, and I'm like, I don't. I don't think so. Like
Hmm.
I think I do pretty well. Maybe I don't, but
Right. Which like I can get why that would be. It
it
feels like an attack.
it made me feel defensive of just
Hmm.
like, well, hey now, like not everyone,
Hmm.
Uh, you know, who knows? Maybe that's just me. Maybe I shouldn't have been defensive. Maybe if I had been truly, truly good coworker to all females, I wouldn't have that immediate reaction. But
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to think. Well, I'll have to think. I'll have to investigate that further.
It's I don't know. I felt like it was the right amount of poking at these issues.
Well, I do think that there's value to having her discuss that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Like I do think that there's like we shouldn't just hide it.
Right.
I also think that there's a certain level of overstatement that can happen in certain things like this, and uh, you know, I guess I'm not all aboard the hate train for like okay, like yes, a lot of male coworkers can be awful. Um, you know, I not all of them. The ones that aren't awful shouldn't just be lumped in though with the ones that are.
Right. Which I can understand.
Yeah.
I could just see why she said it. Is my point.
Okay, that's fair. So, yeah, She-Hulk. We probably won't be talking about this like is as in depth moving forward. Maybe next week. I don't know. Because we'll have She-Hulk, but then we still won't have any new shows
Yeah, because
when it gets busy.
Andor got pushed back,
Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be She-Hulk by itself for another 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. Well, not even because
Rings of Power should be out.
it comes out on the 2nd,
Yeah, so that's
which is.
I don't know
But
what
that should be. I think that'll be similar to how Wheel of Time was, where it will release at GMT time. So I think we would be able to watch it Thursday night.
Hmm. That would be fun. I hope so.
Right, like how Wheel of Time released.
Yeah.
Because it's
Oh, yeah,
on Prime.
it's on Prime. Yeah, you're right.
So I'm assuming it would be the same release schedule or release time, I should say.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, we can one way or another. We'll talk about She-Hulk till we turn green, and
Which
uh,
might be faster for some of us than others.
yeah, I'm interested to see where they take it.
Yeah.
I really am. I really hope I start feeling less annoyed by her, um, but yeah. She's not. I kept thinking that she looked like the actress that from Arrested Development. Maybe I don't think it's the same person though.
I no, it's not.
For some reason, I just kept thinking she was.
From Arrested Development? No.
Yeah. No. Okay.
I'm pretty sure she wasn't in that. Like,
I think you're
fairly
right.
confident she wasn't.
Well, I even looked it up and I didn't see it, so I think that I was just mistaken. But you said she was in Orphan Black,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Which I still think you should watch.
I will. I probably will at some point.
Mm-hmm. I think you would enjoy it. I also think you would enjoy seeing her play different characters.
She, I didn't have a problem with her acting.
Right. It's the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, like you said, hopefully growth. So, anything else today, Sarah? Anything exciting? Anything extra? Have you been reading Stormlight Archive at all?
Yeah, actually, I was reading it today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So we're getting through it. I'm on. I think I just started chapter
Two.
17 today.
Oh,
Rude.
okay. Uh,
So rude.
what do you
Uh,
think so far?
I'm actually enjoying it. It is. It feels slower than Wheel of Time,
Hmm.
um, which I've had a few people who have read it tell me that the first Stormlight book is slower to start. So I'm just kind of trotting along. Um,
Yeah, it builds,
a
and
bit.
then
Hmm.
yeah, the final portion is like the best payoff
That's what everyone keeps telling me.
ever.
So I'm like, okay, I will. But my problem is when things are slow, I have to be very focused on them because if it's slow, it's really easy for my mind to wander, especially because it's an audiobook. It's really easy for my mind to just dip out, and I get frustrated when that happens because then I come back in and I'm like, oh, like what happened? So I have to really focus, which is fine. So I think I have. I was looking at it earlier. I think there's like it's so long. There's like 34 hours to go still.
Yeah.
Like,
Are you in part two yet?
yeah,
Or
I'm in
no?
part two.
So you have
Um,
like Dalinar and okay, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in part
Awesome.
two. Um, they did like a flashback to like 7.5 years ago, or I think it was 7.5 years ago, something like that.
Hmm.
So it is. I'm really enjoying Kaladin as a character. So that's what's kind of like keeping me going. I'm really liking it. So yeah, we're back on.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of my very favorite books in the world.
I
So you had better like
I
it.
was gonna say I really hope that there
No
actually is a
pressure.
payoff then, and I'm not just getting to the end of it like this whole thing.
That's a scam. I'm like, nope, just slow the whole way.
No, I think it'll be good.
Awesome. Cool.
So yeah, what are you reading?
I just finished book three of the Kryto or of the Rogue Squadron. So it's the legends, like Star Wars legends. So it's not canon anymore. It's been decanonized. But book three of Rogue Squadron, like they finally have the long form version of the books instead of like so this book I think was I forget like somewhere like 16 hours 14 hours something like that, unabridged. The abridged version is like 2 hours.
Oh, that is a big difference.
It is just it.
That's
the
like
other one
that's a whole book.
the other one's like a highlight reel is
Yeah.
what it is.
That's like
Yeah,
when when you're shopping on for books like on Amazon and it's like read the first chapter.
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what. So and those have existed forever, and so every time I check I'm like, because I'm like, how did these not exist in audio? How can they not exist? And so they finally there, and the fourth book, the fourth and final Rogue Squadron book, will be out in November. I think I can already pre-order it. So I just finished that today, and I think I'm gonna jump into. I'm either gonna do a Lord of the Rings source book, like Unfinished Tales or something, because there's a few good Numenor stories I've heard in there or something, or I will start on the Thrawn trilogy, the original Thrawn trilogy, which is a Star Wars one as well, and that's also been decanonized, but it has a special place in my heart.
That was canonized too?
The original, so the one that you read, I'm sure, is the one that's not decanonized.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's the new one. No, this is all written in like the 90s, I think.
Okay, yeah, I read the new one. Right.
Yeah. Like I remember the book that I will start, if this is the one that I do start, I read it in third grade. And then I lent it to a girl who was like a know-it-all, like,
Oh
oh, I
no.
read all the time. And she's like, I'll read your book. And I gave it to her. And I lent it to her, and she brought it back to me a few weeks later. I was like, "Oh, did you read it?"
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Yes." I'm like, how did you like it?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know a single thing. Like, either she just didn't comprehend it, she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't smart enough, like she thought she was, or I don't know. It was just really funny. I was like, "You think you're cool, but you're not. You can't even read an adult book."
I thought this was gonna end like go somewhere else where she had like destroyed the book and handed it back to you.
No, no,
Uh,
it was in good condition.
I've lent books out before and then had them come back to me, and I'm like, I remember one came back, and it
Hmm.
first of all it was a hardcover, and it came back as a paperback, and just absolutely smoke stains and waterlogged, and I was like, this is just just disgusting. And ever since then, I do not lend my books out.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I know that happened once. I had my like the dust cover on a book. Like, I lent it to someone, and it came back like ripped in half, and that they had just taped it. They're like, "Sorry about that." I'm like, "You need to buy me a new book now." They're like, "That's like $27." I looked it up. I'm like,
yeah.
If you want to just give me $27, I'll go buy it myself." And
Uh,
they never did, and I still don't like that person.
yeah, see, this is why you just can't lend books out.
No, and now I'm pretty selective about lending my books out. No, my books are for me. Go
Yeah.
get your own books.
Yeah.
I'll tell you which books are good. Go buy it yourself, though. I guess if you're like
uh,
related to me, I could lend it to you.
oh, I've even had relatives like just like I will not. I'm like, no, never again.
All my relatives are the ones I would lend it to are very respectful
Hmm.
books.
I
And
have
they
had,
would buy me a replacement if they ruined it.
yeah, I have had one who did ruin a book, and she bought me the replacement for it. So I was like, okay,
Solid.
cool. Oh, it's been replaced. But yeah.
Oh, I kind of like this. Maybe we should make this a segment.
what,
What are you
what
reading?
we're reading?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how we can keep the books in.
I kind of like that.
So I'm still reading Stormlight.
Good. And I'm still going through a book a week at least, probably this
Yeah.
year. I
Yeah.
need to make a list. It occurred to me, like I was so me and my dad like traded books. He's supposed to read a book that I assigned to. I was like, "Okay, go read this book," and he gave me one, and I read it, and he still hasn't read his. That's fine, but I've read like 10 books since then, and he still hasn't read. He hasn't
Oh
even
man,
started it, and I'm just like, when are you ever gonna read the book that? But it's like most people don't read a book a week, so
that's true.
maybe just get over yourself, Adam.
That's true. I saw on okay, this was my last bit about books, but I saw online this um like parent had posted about how they were bribing their kid to read, and like to get them starting reading from like a young age, and she was like, yeah, we pay him $1 for every book, every chapter book that he reads, and they're like, like those small introductory chapter books when you're a kid. They're not
Okay.
he's not reading like novels. And she's like, he has made $120 this year, and he thinks he's ripping me off.
Uh,
I was like,
that's fun.
that's a good little hack. uh,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'd have I mean, $1 a book. That's not much, but I mean, I remember going on vacations, and I always had two backup books. Like, I was terrified of running out of books
hmm.
to read. Like, when I'd go somewhere, I'd always have my main book that I was on, and then the next two that were planned.
Yeah, yeah. I used to take tons of books with me on vacation as a kid.
Back when you were multiple
When I
kids.
was multiple kids, me and my multiple personalities.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds
uh,
neat.
so yeah, I guess that's it.
All right. Yeah, don't I hope you don't find water and shade, because that's not our sign off anymore.
No, we'll come up with a new one. Yeah, I think that's it. I want to know what everyone else is reading though. They can tell us in Discord.
Yeah, go join our Discord, guys. It's
Yeah.
in the show notes or whatever medium you're in. The video thing. We need to rename that too, don't we?
Yeah, we gotta do a
Let's
lot.
call let's call it the dagger for site plan right here. There's a whole revamp we got to do on that Discord server, but we still have a general chat. We could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So
that's it. That's
um
all. Till next week.
yeah, go read a book or watch an awesome show.